Vitaly, friends, I am Vitaly Portnikov. Before Caracas arrived in the Russian temple transport or so-called cream for Naaman and technical possession. Needs a friendly regime to Moscow. Lataka to Venezuela came running from the appearance of the Yaqui, the president of Venezuela, Nicolas Maduro. Curled up to the curves in Russia, the People's Republic of China to Iran, and with a pro about the whiskey lime and his faithful conflict. And with the received states. It has already been stated about the behavior about what killed in the House of Praise, the decision about the fallout of the Maduro regime. I did not overstate the one-time fake in the presidential election. However, when President Donald Trump and the Sovereign Secretary of the United States Marco Rubio received all the information of the American Mets. However, Maduro is extremely worried about the American intervention and the collapse of the regime. And Moscow had enough for such an American intervention. And Donald Trump is not to blame for Venezuela. I have been growing up on Tisna, or even months of confrontation. The American-Venezuelan army is extremely outlier. I will also effectively dump the Venezuelan army of separation in Russia, China, and Iran. Then I will leave the president with the received states of under-Russian Ukrainian guilt and uneconomical sanctions against Moscow. And so it is with two allies, but you can talk about sweets from the received states in that region, which is important for the beer American powers. And the view from piracy has contributed to lay down and energetically stability to the region, and it is possible to conduct. When hiring firm Maybut, an alternative to the on-site post with the Russian Federation and the Ukrainian Zatek. Neither the truth that the regimes of Hugo Chavez and Nicolas Maduro Venezuelan NAFTA fishing for a real effective. It is clear that they will need not serious ones for not about NAFTA, but for himself about the new true guilt in Latin America. As Nicolas Maduro himself is preparing for it, so his patrons of Moscow, and I will leave. And in Russia, you decided not just to coal the protests with lime, the idea from the fucking Venezuelan states received. So the press secretary of the Russian Ministry of Zakordny, Maria Zakharova, has already informed the American administration that she is violating international law before driving a beard with a drug cartel. Nicolas Maduro has a real whiskey technique, and his rebels from the so-called private whiskey corporations will fight with the American whiskey mind and their Venezuelan colleagues on the deployment to Caracas. And here it is known, we can again persuade about the fact that the escalation between the two largest nuclear and attempts from the party retinue and gaining new forum. Since receiving the United States, I have been trying to determine the average fate of the Russian-Ukrainian war and everything, so that I do not pump them out. And these are the average fates. So it was because of the Obama administration, it was because of the administration of Joseph Biden. So you drop out, and the overgrown Donald Trump finished off, then Putin absolutely has tasks. I just want to have my presence, their obvious American interests, and show Yaxi interests can ignore and bypass. Viskova transport or so. I am to the point that you find enviable sanctions, defiantly showed up at the airport of the Venezuelan table. Just the bags between Washington and Caracas, we can say, are at the highest point. And the American landings of Nicolas Maduro about dictatorship, and the factual acceptance of drugs in the doses received by the states. A demonstration that Putin respects himself as a geopolitical graph with a date-thrown Viklik to Donald Trump. And the topic of confrontation with the American president. And Putin's task, yaki is Xi Jinping's task. Premenstrual have this Svitova America, after Trump, became Slabko not Spatnu on I'm serious lead. And yet I of Ukraine, are determined to protect their interests, and not to ensure for America. But to think like firm Russia and China. And I'm still in Moscow will go for the regime of Nicolas Maduro. And the states themselves have received types of serious actions against the Venezuelan president, on the aphids of his confrontation with Russia and China. I will prove that the states received discounts during the reign of Donald Trump. And we do not forget the American president, who is ready and up to impulsive power ideas in a situation. I'll upload his reputation. Make a wish for him. Tell him about the American strikes on Iranian nuclear facilities. Iran from the nuclear dump. So take responsibility for the process of pretending to be an Islamist dictatorship for a nuclear power for at least a month yet. We also hand over the fact that Donald Trump has overgrown. The promo is visible in the nuclear testing. And with the states still receiving the escalation of the Mish nuclear Ukraine and the retinue to a new well-started stand. And that Trump can accept the shouts of Putin and Xi Jinping from Venezuela. I am flocking to the arena of baked beard and guilt of Ukraine, and you are going to bring your geopolitical vaga today. And we are perfectly well, of course, even now the received states will not win the gluing of the beard. If they do not grow into a mega scale, then the gentlemen of the retinue will become dictators. Diakuyu. Inflate on the channel, subscribe to it, subscribe to my social ones on the Patreon channel. And helps develop these resources with the sponsorship function yourself. Hi still cool down.